welcome to The Depths. In a couple minutes, these guys and Mike Damiani are going to be talking about DMC. But real quick, I just wanted you guys to know there's no Invisible Walls this week, but it is coming back. Just been a kind of a crazy week, and just wanted to let you know. We were going to do The Depths anyway, so hopefully you guys can get something out of this. We were going to talk about Devil May Cry. So, sit back, enjoy, and get ready for The Depths.
I'm taking you off the air.
You think so? I wouldn't bet on it.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Devil May Cry. We've all played it. I think some of you have completed it. Some of us, and this may shock everybody out there, I'm actually 3/4 of the way through the game. I'm not all the way through, but I've also played more than just 2 hours, which is kind of stunning to probably a lot of you out there. Let's get the controversial shit out of the way first. Let's talk about Dante, the new Dante. I mean, I'm gonna start with you, Mike. You are you're the affirmed Devil May Cry player. You've played all the versions. You've got an attachment to the old school Dante. Does it really impact the game that you're playing with this guy who looks like he should have been in One Direction?
What the fuck is One Direction?
It's something that young people will get. It's an boy band type thing.
Oh, the song or the group, yeah. There's two sides to this, basically. Does it actually affect the game itself? No, obviously not. It's not gonna. It doesn't impact the gameplay. Doesn't impact any kind of like that type of the experience there. But I still say that you can acknowledge that a game is a good game, like mechanically, it's very well designed. But you personally can have it's not personally your taste. So you can't get into the world, you can't get into kind of the narrative of the game, and because of that, even though you acknowledge it's a good game, you personally say I don't like this game. That's like the opinion part of it comes out. For me, regards to Dante, I still don't necessarily prefer this style, his look, his personality. I still prefer the old style of Dante, but I'm not going to let that blind me and say this game sucks, this game is a bad game because Ninja Theory did something to Dante that I don't prefer. That's completely false. In my opinion, this is still a very good game. I just prefer the old style of Dante, the old personality, the old look. And it's a personal choice for that, and I definitely see that as a valid argument from people, as long as you are not blinded by like fanboy rage, that this game sucks simply because it doesn't adhere to your kind of a self-entitlement that this game needs to continue the look of Dante, the feel of the old Dante, and screw you Ninja Theory for coming in. I understand that knee-jerk reaction at first, but I do not sympathize with people who after they play it, unless they start arguing why the game is bad on other merits. If you just say if you say you're not gonna try it just because you do not like the new look of Dante, that does bother me a bit.
Well, I can understand that too. Like, I think a lot of the decisions we make about whether or not we play a game, it comes down to aesthetics. If it doesn't seem like a world you want to inhabit, I think that's a valid enough reason.
But at least try it.
Sure.
See it in action.
Play the demo.
And then if you played the demo, you don't like the look and feel of it, of the new Dante, then fine. Then that's justified.
Yeah.
And I'm saying like that's what I agree with. And for me, while I still enjoyed the rest of the game, the best possible situation for me is if they somehow had the old Dante, the old look, or some way to have that character back in here.
Yeah.
But everything else around that game,
I mean, there will be at some point.
I'm sure there will
You'll be able to buy the skin from Xbox Live.
As soon as the PC version comes out.
One interesting thing, like surrounding the consequences of this reboot, is that it wasn't that long since there has been a Devil May Cry. Like usually, when a franchise is rebooted in this way, it's been dormant, it's been flagging. Whereas I think Devil May Cry was kind of having a good run. It seemed like there were other circumstances behind why they did this, and I think that contributes to a lot of the ire you see out there. It's just like people probably feel like it wasn't broken. Why are you like quote unquote fixing it?
Exactly.
Right?
That's part of where the confusion comes, or at least the lack of understanding. Is that you're correct? Devil May Cry 4 came out in 2008. That is correct. Like February.
I think it was 07, right?
Wasn't it right before Metal Gear Solid 4?
Whatever.
Okay, it came out a few years ago. Sorry if I got the date wrong, but it only came out a few years ago. But I believe Devil May Cry 4 was one of the best selling in the series. It got decent critical reaction from critics and fans alike. And there just wasn't, most people drew the conclusion that why do you need to reboot something that's so successful, is on an upward trend, and it kind of harkens back to there were probably some behind-the-scenes politics shit going on at Capcom where certain people left.
Well,
certain
some of the
decisions-
key people left to start.
Right,
the studio.
that's the reason why,
Yeah.
most likely, and that there wasn't a way to continue that series as it was, so they
Right.
needed to turn to something else. I think that's the real reason the reboot came about, not because the series is in dire straits. It needs to flip around. And
Right.
So
you know,
it's a very ballsy move to reboot that franchise. I mean, and fair dues to Capcom, they have, they've said from the get-go it's a reboot, and I would say, I mean, perhaps they're looking at outside of just the video game environment. I mean, you think about it. Yes, they've made Dante more traditional looking, if you will, or more, super male model or whatever.
I actually think he's less of that. Like,
Well-
I mean, I think he's more of like the street thug.
he's kind of more grounded in reality. A little
Yeah,
bit,
I would
right?
actually
Like
say-
before, it was a cartoon character. Now it's
Well,
like somebody
but he's
who.
less statuesque. He's more just kind of the your neighborhood kind of graffiti artist, kind of thuggish like type
Yeah, I
character.
mean, he looks like the guy who, the lead character in Infamous. But my point being that maybe they've done this with a view to perhaps finally, taking Devil May Cry to the big screen. Everybody's trying to monetize and evolve, and if you make this character more the everyman, then that's more accessible to a bigger audience.
I mean, I may be the minority here, but I like the new look. Like, I don't know, I think the core of the game is still exactly the same and more classic than it has ever been to the original Devil May Cry. But I mean, I like the redesigns of Dante, Virgil.
dig, yeah.
I think they nailed it.
I think
And-
the world is slick. Yeah, it looks really cool.
and they give a really great nod in the first level to that when the wig is blown on him and he looks straight at the camera and like breaks the fourth wall and he's like, not in a million years, and like takes it off. They're very aware of what's happening,
Sure.
And they're playing with it, and I appreciate that.
And I think that's probably going to just piss some people off even more.
Right,
They can
right.
do
You know
that
what?
as an
though?
insult.
Like, good for them.
if you're among the probably minuscule minority who doesn't have a sense of humor about that stuff, then that's no hope, right? I'll say this: like, whatever the reason was for this reimagining, I can't help but applaud when a publisher does that, just because so much of the MO of the industry is to just not tamper with anything if it's working. You know what I mean? Like, when somebody changes something unexpectedly, like that's kind of what we always complain about, right? That doesn't happen enough. So, bravo, I would say, right? Like, sure, this probably wasn't done for the reasons that whatever we hoped it would have done. Like this, if all those things weren't happening at Capcom, we probably would have had a Devil May Cry 5 that looked like the games that we played before, but this is what we have now.
Well,
and
you've also got, I mean, this is the thing. They've made it more accessible. And I rarely give Capcom compliments because of some of the shit they pull. I've got to give them huge compliments for this because, yeah, there is Devil May Cry 1 through 4 that everybody is familiar with, but not, that's the thing, everybody being a certain section of the gaming audience. For Capcom to do well commercially, they want it to be bigger and more interesting. I came into Devil May Cry to play number 3. And while I enjoyed it, I had some issues with certain aspects like the camera angle. I didn't know any of the lore. I hadn't played the previous games. I wasn't really that attached to it. Whereas now, I'm now understanding more about the lore of Devil May Cry, which, it did need that reboot. I mean, and we see this in James Bond, we see it in Star Trek and whatever. I mean, I think it's a good move, and I know there are a lot of people who are going to disagree with us, but I think it's a good move to bring him up to date, put him out there for a new audience, because there's way more Xboxes and PS3s and gaming PCs out there than there were when he first made his debut. And trim some of that baggage away. I mean, you've done enough, retrospectives and timelines. I mean, how much baggage comes with the universe and with the lore, and every single version of a game just adds more on top. Sometimes you got to trim, reboot, and start again. I think this Dante is a dick. He's a dick who looks like he belongs in a boy band. But I can see as the game progresses, he does begin to evolve as a character. So I've got no real quibbles with it.
I would say, just real quick, on a story level for the game, the original series, I don't really feel it was that overly complex.
And
with
it
the 4 games.
didn't seem like they ever took that part of it too seriously.
Those games were about the showmanship, the spectacle, and I do feel that's something that this DMC is lacking compared to the previous games. There were those over-the-top, ridiculous cutscenes where motorcycles are flying off. Like you'd ride a motorcycle, throw it off, slow-mo, shoot it, make it explode. Those crazy aerobatics. There is that to a lesser extent in this new one, and I do miss that. I do miss that
Like
flashiness.
the flamboyant stuff.
Yeah, I do miss that a bit. I do miss that style of it, and I do feel that carries over a bit into the actual game, the game mechanics. In the combo system, the combo system is it is intricate at first. There's a lot of buttons to use. The older Devil May Cry's, it was still a very intricate system, but you weren't having to push, to do any one move, it felt like there were a lot of buttons to push for that. This one, I guess...
There's a lot of modifiers, right? And especially when you're first starting the game, it feels like so much of that complexity is very front-loaded. So, at least for me, like, I was getting confused doing
There's
the
grab
angelic and
then-
demonic power
Exactly, yeah.
stuff. It takes a little while. They did change it up. It's not exactly like playing the old games. It was very different. So it will take those players. But what I'm trying to get at is I feel once you learn the ins and outs of the new combo system, there is a ceiling you're going to hit. Not in skill level, but in terms of how creative and flashy it gets compared to the older ones. The older ones with the mix, especially starting with Devil May Cry 3, the different styles, the way you switch weapons in that game. It is a different level of creative freedom, I think, in creating those combos. You see some ridiculous-looking stuff that you could do in the older games, and it felt like there was a higher ceiling for that in the older games. And in this one,
Sure, yeah.
the bag of tricks, you run out of the bag gets empty pretty quickly. I would say before
This
a few
one-
hours in the game, you have almost everything, and the new skills that you do buy only enhance, make something more powerful. Or extend the range.
Some of them do give you new things, right? Like once you you get
there
to
are
a point
few,
where
yeah.
you've completed the moveset for every weapon, and then yeah, you're right. From there, it modifies it and makes it so that makes things hang higher, do more damage, go farther.
But look at the combos. Like example is in Devil May Cry 3. You remember you could like rev Devil May Cry 4, Nero, the revving mechanic on his weapon. And he could like surf around on enemies and stuff. And same thing in like Devil May Cry 3. Like that type of zaniness is not there.
Right.
And I feel that it's the combo system and moves are more and ultimately more limited in the new one. And that's where it becomes more accessible. While initially it feels a little like, holy shit, this is overwhelming.
Right.
I think the average person is going to be able to get is just going to grapple people, stay in the air, spamming that, grapple more people, and it looks like I'm doing something cool.
Yeah.
Whereas in the older ones, you could do it looked like you would just hack and slash, you'd maybe launch someone, and that was the extent if you button mash. But doing any of that crazy shit, I think there was more of that, and I think that was kind of the problem, was how intricate you had to get to be able to execute some of that stuff. It was almost like a fighting game with the combo strings, like the intricacies of the moves and the timing.
You're not going to see as many crazy combo videos for this game as you are for the
if you
older
are,
ones.
it's that crap that people have figured out where you could spam the cancels in the air and you just like hover there forever.
Right,
and it looks
right.
ridiculous. And
But to be
shenanigans.
fair, a lot of the older Devil May Cry videos were also they also involved some kind of like odd, like almost borderline exploiting mechanics.
Yeah, but like
as
one
well.
of the popular videos out there, there's since there's no styles in this game, the aerial one where you could like teleport behind people, they don't have that in this one. So people are using the cancels to go over, to make themselves manually go around enemies to make it look flashier. They're trying to emulate that old style. I'm not saying that's bad or good. It's kind of amusing to see that.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
And I guess maybe that's cool that you can even be able to try and mimic that in the game.
Yeah.
But that's where I see the discrepancy between the two games mechanically, and then personally on a level that contributes to the difference in style. The older games are flashier. Once you put in the time to learn that, you did all this cool looking shit that was ridiculous. The only type of game you could see this in. And now they kind of curtailed it in a little bit, and that's where I see.
But as a result,
yeah.
now you could basically utilize combos that aren't super complex to do, but do a lot of damage and still get a good rating, which it does make it more accessible, right?
That's a whole other discussion.
The
about
game is
the ranking
reinforcing.
system in that
Sure.
game, how it's based on damage rather than style. And
Right.
now that the game's out, a lot of people who played the older games are a little upset at how broken the ranking system is in that game, how easy it is to manipulate it to get those really high rankings.
Well, is it broken or was that their intent? You know what I mean?
Let's pause for a second. Let's talk like for like. Let's compare the new DMC to Devil May Cry 1. Let's put 2, 3, and 4
I
to
have
one
to
side.
agree, like-
Because I think, and again, I haven't played Devil May Cry, and you can go, Rohan, I'll come back to you, sorry to interrupt. I haven't played Devil May Cry 1 and 2. I came in at number 3, and yeah, seeing those combo videos, friggin' intimidating for somebody like me who is not really adept at this stuff. So how does it compare going back to number 1? DMC versus Devil May Cry 1. Did you have that level of showmanship and flashiness right from the get-go in the very first game? And like I said, I apologize, I didn't play
DMC 1 had a lot of those moves where they weren't exactly listed. I remember when people first figured out how to do Stinger in that game, they were like, oh shit, there's like moves in here. Like it rewarded people for experimenting with timing. People thought this is a button masher, but then when you like delayed hits or you tap directions and people started to figure that out, there was a deeper system than the surface level appeared. I don't think ultimately at the beginning it had it's honestly it's just difficult to compare them. And I will say that is one way to look at it, but I just want to say it feels a little unfair because DMC, the new one, does have all these games to base off of. Like it has the luxury of looking back at what they've done.
And also, like I mean, Devil May Cry, I think started this sort of game, but this game also has like the entire legacy of, stylish action.
And I'll point out more so than any of the other ones, DMC 1 was originally developed as a Resident Evil game, and you could see that legacy in that game and the design of the environments. It feels more like a mansion, like Gothic style environment where you're backtracking lots of puzzles. DMC 1 is a very good game, and I think it is more unique than the rest of them in terms of like the structure of it. I wish they could recapture some of that. I was hoping the new DMC might do that. They still do. Every one of them are still broken into chapters, but the backtracking, the puzzles. There was something there to that, and then they went away from that. It was mostly just get enough red orbs to open a door, or you found a key after beating a boss. That's where it went. DMC 1, it has its problems. It's much slower pace. The lock-on system's a little janky in that one. Going back and playing it again, the platforming with fixed camera angles is not the best at all. I know a lot of people have problems with that. The new one did tease a lot of cool things with the platforming, the grappling and stuff. I do feel at some point they got tired. They stopped being creative and imaginative with that, and it just became repetitive. But before I forget this, let me say one thing that was really cool about the old ones that I don't understand why it's not in there. I wish they'll bring back at some point. The crazy acrobatics, like Dante running up walls, like running alongside walls, or even jumping on a wall, and he do the kind of like jump hop thing. That stuff's not there anymore in the new one. At least I haven't seen it.
It's it is the first game in the franchise. No, Rohan, sorry I interrupted you. You were going to make a
No,
point.
no. I was just going to say, I mean, you got to remember from I guess from a business standpoint, you scale back to build up. So this is the first one of the reboot series. The next one will have more features. They're probably holding their hand a little bit in some of these move sets, styles, all of that kind of stuff, so that they can build it up over the next 3 games.
That said, though, I would be surprised if they elaborate on the complexity. I mean, I'm sure these guys could have made a more complex game if they wanted to. I think this was a decision to kind of focus it on.
I think it was. I think it was successful. I've played Devil May Cry 1 and 2. Didn't play 3 or 4 very much, but I think they were very successful in having a game that is stylish, fun to play. And it drives you. So
I gotta say, it has sucked me in. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. And I gotta understand, this is a risky move by Capcom. It's taking one of their biggest franchises and taking it and giving it to a bunch of English people in Ninja Theory to go off and do this. And that for any Japanese company is exceptionally hard to do. So I mean, I'm first of all, let me just say how happy I am they fixed the fucking camera angle. And I know perhaps some people really adore that fixed camera because it's all part of that stylistic thing.
But I think the first one was the only one that was maybe the first and second were the only ones that were strictly fixed. Like the other games,
No. There was 3 was pretty.
Was
3
always-
is pretty bad with that actually.
Yeah.
And that was my problem with 3 because I loved exploring and trying to do these combos that I could never really pull off. But just that time-honored tradition of running through a door, having the camera angle switch, and then running back out again right away, the same door. And this time, I think the free roaming camera works a lot better. There are some issues where it gets perhaps a little hung up when you're in an elevator, or it's you're crossing a bridge and it seems to like just bump a little or lock. But then once it's behind you, I found it much more. Much easier, especially when you got multiple points of attack. When the harpies are coming at you and you're on the glass, sort of like upside down ceiling.
That is a cool sequence.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much good stuff in there. I mean, it's really got me interested in this whole, angels and demons side of it. Again, from the story side, I do love this sort of like kind of biting or semi-biting political commentary that they've got, with the junk food. And guess what? Guess what the junk food really is? And I'm not going to spoil it, but you have like the
Watch Futurama.
but then you have the talking head pseudo
Like
cable
literally
TV guy.
fighting the talking head.
Yeah, but I mean the fact that you have this sort of thing, which is very similar to what's going on in our world, and I think that's perhaps something that perhaps necessarily a Japanese team couldn't have executed, and that's something perhaps Ninja Theory did do very well, in my opinion. But I'm really into it. I mean, I'm learning about Dante from the beginning for once, and I don't know how the lore in this one is comparing to the first one with the mom and the dad, and how the brother fits in. But I'm beginning to, I get a feel for the character. I mean, just from the get-go when they drop you in and you have those first couple of wraiths, you're in limbo coming at, and those things coming at you. It just really sucked me in.
I have to say, I have an appreciation for one thing. When you look at this game and you haven't played it, you said, oh man, there's going to be so many quick time events in this game. Not one quick time.
Not one. No, that's a good point.
Thank God.
Well,
You know what?
Well done.
They very, very smartly put in sequences that kind of fulfill the role that a quick time event would fulfill.
They just take it over from a cinematic perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? Good for you.
And you're actually playing. It's not like this sort of nigh offensive thing that takes like a big button prompt. It's more like, okay, we want you to do something here, but we're going to give you a second to look at the world and figure out what we want you to do.
Yeah, they could have easily put in quick time events on so many occasions. The Succubus fight, the Bob Barbas fight. Like, there's so many different times where they could have easily done that, and they didn't do it.
Have you guys played the quick time event level? Which is it's not a quick time event to its credit, but again, in any other game, this would have been a 3-minute cinematic where you're just pressing buttons. It's the one where time is slowed down and you gotta
car chase or
where you gotta like make a path for the car while you're in
following
limbo.
the car.
Yeah, that's really cool. That they did that.
Well, even the Bob Barbas fight, mild spoilers, like they do a couple cool things during that which take you out of the traditional boss fight in a unique way that really surprised me. It's just like, whoa, okay, well that's kind of neat.
It's playful, yeah, and I mean to address something you brought up earlier, like this game, in my opinion, more than any other one in the series, it does put the narrative and the story and the background and all that stuff like front and center in a way that the old ones didn't. Like they're actually treating Dante like a character that they want to be relatable as opposed to just basically like a cartoon character that is there to do the flamboyant stuff that Mike misses.
He's got some baggage, and his brother's got some baggage, and the little sidekick has got some baggage, and I think everything they've done needs to be applauded. I can understand the fan, some of the hardcore fans being disappointed because when they've changed some of my favorite games, I've been fucking pissed off.
Well, not. I will say this: like, not all the combat-related changes, in my opinion, have been for the better or even well conceived. Right? Like, it would be great if either the auto lock-on worked better, or if they actually gave you the option to lock on. Because I found that when
auto lock is missing, and
when you're fighting like mixed compositions of enemies, where some are on the ground and others are like airborne, you try. One of the most reliable ways to deal with airborne enemies, especially the ones that have a shield, is to like use the demon winch to like snag it off. But at least half the time when I try to do that, it will automatically choose one of the ground enemies to do that. And a lot of the time, like especially when you're playing on higher difficulties, like that could really screw you over.
Yeah, and the part where you fight different types of enemies, the angelic and demonic ones.
Yeah.
The one scene I'm thinking of on the lower difficulty was the club part where the two demon dog type
The
things.
beast things.
The beast things come after you, and they own. Not having a lock on and dealing with two things where you have to switch between weapons. That was one part where really could have used some kind of lock on.
Right,
because you can't hurt the other one with the other power, and you're holding down angelic or demonic, the trigger for that one to damage the other, and then if you do something and it locks on to the other one without you having any like conscious decision or any real means to control
Right.
you get frustrated a bit. And to be fair, like it did not ruin anything in the game. It just made a few things a little bit more difficult than they could have been if they just simply added that in there somewhere, especially when it was something that existed before.
Right. Well, what I found is that it forced you to just kind of adopt strategies that you knew would work, as opposed to doing the surefire thing. I could lock onto this guy, hold him in place with whatever, the spinning stars thing while I kill this other guy.
It becomes a game of isolation, especially in the harder difficulties where you get thrown a much larger crowd of enemies. It's crowd control and then isolating enemies one-on-one, so you do not have to worry about...
Which is a cool tactic anyway, right? I'm glad that
and they give you the tools. They do, to be fair, they do give you the tools to do this. And also, one thing is that while it does feel like I'm harping on the game quite a bit, this is... Let me be clear that this is a good game. It's still saying that it even comes close to being compared to the older Devil May Cry's in my book is a huge compliment. And I do want to say that like kudos to the Ninja Theory team for being able to pull off even this. It is a very, very solid game, and despite the discrepancies that some older fans might have with it, it might not be up to the level of mechanics, or the style might not be the same, but this is still much better than a lot of other similar action games out there. And I do have more confidence after playing it that if they do make a sequel and they improve upon it, it's only going to get better, and this will become like another solid series. It'll be a solid series again, but there is just a little bit of that remorse and lament that we don't have that older Devil May Cry anymore. Although I would argue there's this company called Platinum that will be fulfilling that thing with Bayonetta and stuff. So
that's kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the room, is that Devil May Cry 5 does exist. It's just called.
And
Bayonetta,
I understand the
and
fan
it's a
attention.
different
There
character.
are some fans who are like, no, I wanted Platinum to make the Devil May Cry game. Like that thing's never going to go away. And I understand the anguish that some fans feel about losing that Devil May Cry identity's gone to something else.
Anguish is a strong word.
Anguish, man.
That's not me personally. To look at some of the comments out there, you could tell there are
there's
a lot of
pissed
hurt,
off people.
upset, very angry. Look at the user Metacritic. That's obviously a conscious thing by like a angry fan base to like discredit that game.
Metacritic
whatever.
bombing.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because I mean this to me is the first Capcom game in a long time that I have thoroughly enjoyed, and just it came at the right time. Yeah, there's not a lot.
You didn't like Dragon's Dogma?
I didn't really
Fucking wrong, man. That game's
I
good.
didn't dig Asura's Wrath and Dragon's Dogma as much as everybody else. But for me, and people will look at this and say I'm an absolute Philistine, but this one sucked me in from the get-go. I really just dug the combos. I felt like I was powerful as I was unlocking the new stuff. And they do stagger out, the angelic weapons and the demonic weapons, and then the fists, and then the press click to turn everything up and down, upside down. And I don't know the vernacular because I'm still playing it, but I feel really kind of powerful. And when I do pull off some of the combos, that for somebody like me who's not necessarily a fan of this style of game, I do get that sense of achievement. I mean, not the same sense of achievement that you get when you've got one hand on the controller and you're bouncing 55 enemies in the air while having a cup of coffee.
Let's be honest here, right? Like, the people who are complaining about the skill ceiling, that represents like a very small minority of people.
Yeah.
Most people who play this game,
very
most
vocal
most people who would call hardcore even are not able to fully exploit the old.
There are a lot of
Devil May Cry
people
game.
joining the bandwagon complaining about the mechanics, that it's not as deep or intricate, but let's be clear, there is a very small portion of any gaming fan base, or just people in general, who can even understand what how high the ceiling goes in terms of execution and skill for Devil May Cry games. Very few people really truly understand that, and people are just jumping on board based on video evidence and trusting the word of someone who's an established pro at the game or whatever. And even those, and to be fair, even some of those types of players have come out and said, while the ceiling is not as high in the new DMC, there is still a level that the average person won't even get remotely close to. Absolutely. There is a pretty high skill level for some of the stuff you can do execution-wise in the DMC. So the people who are kind of complaining, I hope everyone kind of understands that there are only certain people who are even really qualified to even like make that that assessment and be able to like understand it. Otherwise, it's people kind of summarizing what others have said and just taking it on faith and on video evidence, which it is clear by video evidence, but to say like there's a giant, like even like 1 million fans who all can do like the shit you see in some of the best videos out there is bullshit.
Right. And
there's like maybe a handful of people who can fucking do that stuff. Yeah. And so that argument needs to be like, kind of like stomped down a bit, because even if the Ninja Theory could execute that, it's only catering to a very fucking small part of the audience. And while it's cool to see, there is something to be said about the accessibility. Like there is, even on fucking the old Devil May Cry, there was easy auto. I don't get this. There was easy auto lock on in the older games that made it super fucking casual.
Well, look, I would say this. I suspect the same is true for most of us here. Is that when I play one of these games, I'm kind of judging the way the combat feels in its own right. Right. I'm not comparing it against some non-present standard. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and I think this game feels good. It looks good. Like Dante looks cool when he's doing the moves like that. That really just basic combo where you're just spamming 4 sword strokes. Like at the end, he kind of staggers a bit. Like that right there, like evokes character to me. You know what I mean? It looks cool. It feels satisfying.
It's got some nice little touches. I mean, even just when you've done the angelic grappling hook to pull yourself towards something, and then you do the boost afterwards, and you land, and you just got, again, the little skid, the little stumble as he's getting used to it. It feels like this is Dante out of his comfort zone. He's still a cocky little shit, but this is a bunch of stuff that he's getting the thrill of, but you're experiencing the thrill of doing this for the first time with him.
Yeah, it's fluid. I think the game is fluid. It's stylistic. It has attitude, and at the end of the day, I mean,
Food,
that's
right? Apostrophe T-U-D-E.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what Devil May Cry is. It's
there needs to be more. There needs to be more fans and more people playing this game. The exclusivity entitlement argument that I hear sometimes is the most bullshit thing I ever hear.
Like, just celebrate great games. Like, why do we have to be so critical of everything?
Well, I think sometimes things are changed for the worse. And I think there's a legitimate
but this
complaint
case,
for that.
specifically, but I don't think this is necessarily.
I don't.
the
This is
case.
not. This is certainly not the case. Yeah, and I will say, like, playing through it the first time, you're learning the first playthrough, like kind of getting the hang of it, and like the second time through, I'm doing stuff that I wasn't doing much of before, and that right there shows depth to me. Like maybe I'm not the kind of person who will automatically grok a system and like do and fully exploit it the first time through, but the fact that it can sustain a second playthrough and even going into a third on the Dante Must Die mode, like that says something to me about this.
The game does such a good job of teaching you how to play the game too with its mechanics. I think some of the older Devil May Cry games kind of failed at that. You would spend time looking up the moves, how to do them.
Well, you can't do that this time because there's no manual. The game does not come with a manual, so you can't even look it up.
I thought you could look up the
You can
moves.
print it out online for $5.99.
There's this website that has really good game manuals called GameFAQs.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they have, you can see the moves in the game, but you don't have
you don't
have the old school manual where you'd have the little arrows and the combos. That's gone the way the dodo.
We'll say one thing here, like, and I don't think any of us here, even you keep referring to me, like none of us here are really good, very, very good at like Devil May Cry.
I'm fucking good at it.
The best person in the office, honestly, is fucking Patrick, and he's not here to play it, and he's probably the most qualified to speak on like the intricacy of like that high level shit, but like that's just showing how exclusive that is.
Sure.
And that type of argument is, I think, it's okay to think like that on some kind of like level, but I think trying to criticize the whole game because it didn't meet that level of expectation is a little ridiculous.
So
and I don't sympathize with people who are like getting angry over that.
Yeah.
So we're gonna wind it up, and I just want to throw 2 things out there. First of all, I think that given Capcom's track record for added content, I'm sure we will see some perhaps new combos, and there'll be some DLC for DMC where we'll perhaps get
Well,
the option of buy. I mean, we know there's avatars and all that stuff coming, but I think
There's a survival mode that's being released for free.
The Bloody Palace. Yeah.
But I'm thinking that there'll be perhaps another standalone story that plugs into perhaps the as a postscript where perhaps we might start to see this evolution that people want to see of so you've learnt your combos, now you can really sort of like push them to the next level. And I think that would be something cool to see.
He's gonna go from the angsty teenage demon hunter to like the pizza eating Ninja Turtle guy that he was.
He's going to go straight into his midlife crisis, wife, 3 kids, and a car. And then the last thing I want to throw out before we wrap up and sort of like give our final comments on the game, I think this, like I said, bold move for Capcom. I'd like to see them do this with Resident Evil. I would like to see them take this route, go back to the start, chop away some of the lore, repurpose it, give us a new Resident Evil 1 that perhaps and again going back to the to the original, and then just play with the lore and expand it from there, from the ground up again, make it a little more modern, and dare I say it, a little more perhaps westernized, so it is perhaps a little more accessible, and lose some of the things that I think some of the things they've tried to do to make it more Western have not really failed because have really failed because they've really pulled away from what the franchise core is.
So you want Resident Evil to become a cover-based bro shooter?
I don't really want to become. I don't want it to be a cover-based bro shooter.
That's a series that's been around longer. It is. You could argue it's on a downward trend. The last one got pretty panned and it had mixed reviews and critical reception. It seems like the sales didn't match RE5 sales. That's one that's on like a downward trend, and it would make a little bit more logically. It seems like that's the next one.
So this might have been the perfect test case for them. It's like, all right, well, Devil May Cry is not as big, no disrespect to the fans, but it's not as big as Resident Evil. Let's look to see how we can execute this, because, I mean, previously they tried to reboot Bionic Commando, and that was just a disaster. I mean, it ended up getting cancelled, didn't it? I think the Bionic Commando
it came out.
They had the original one,
but
remake,
reboot,
and then like
I think they're only
modern
making 2D ones now.
Yeah,
they're doing the Rearmed.
The Rearmed series is still going on.
All right, so we're going to wrap up, and I'm going to start with Miguel. Final thoughts on the game. Do you recommend people rent it or buy it?
It's your money, man. Do whatever you want. But I like the game. I think it's cool. I think it's worth experiencing. There frankly aren't many games like this, like crazy melee combat, flashy, spectacular games. This is, I think, a very good example of that. I think it happens to carry this baggage. It has this like weighty franchise on it, but I think if you approach it on its own merits, it's fun. Like, I think it looks spectacular. Like, it's an interesting world. I was always surprised going through it. And yeah, I had a great time with it.
Rohan?
Yeah, I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. Like I said, I mean, I've been surprised. I haven't had any quick time events. None of that expectation that I think I had going into it. It surprised me. Like, every level, I think, has like a little surprise in it that kind of makes me think. And they break the fourth wall, which I appreciate a whole lot. And they have that self-awareness to it. I say, vote with your dollars. If you want to try to see an old franchise succeed and come into 2013 and lead the charge, I think this is a great game if you like that style of game.
Mike D, in 60 seconds or less.
My stance on like the personal taste thing, but I had fun with this game. That's the bottom line. I had fun. I enjoyed it. I think almost anyone, even of the older fan base, that the ones that are complaining about this, just try it somehow. Get it in your hands somehow to try it out. Play through like the first 3-4 missions. Get a feel for it. I think you'll like what you see. You might disagree with some stuff, but you'll still like it. I think you'll recognize that this isn't a bad game. This isn't the shit that people are making out to be. And if you're still hooked on the 30 versus 60 frames thing, wait for the PC version coming on the 25th. They did that test that says it can clock in at 200 frames.
Just go back and play the old versions over and over again.
You'll get the PC version. You'll get your fucking 60 frames there. I can't wait to actually see how that looks in that. But a lot of credit to Ninja Theory for putting up with all this shit. Just personally, like me, I interviewed them several times. I always ask those questions, and they put up with that type of like feedback or kind of backlash from the fan base. And they have this game now, and I'm sure Capcom's going to keep them around for a while to keep making these games. So it's either get on board with this or go find another series.
Okay. All right, and yeah, from me, I'm digging it. I really am digging it. I love the reboot. I think Capcom have been very bold. It's very rare I compliment them. So yeah, try it out.